In this emotional narrative, we dive into the story of James and Sarah, whose love story began like a fairy tale. Their wedding was a joyous celebration, and their life together was filled with happy memories. However, subtle changes in Sarah's behavior began to sow seeds of doubt in James's mind. Friends and family hinted at unusual behavior, leading James to investigate further. His world shattered upon discovering Sarah's affair with a co-worker. Overwhelmed with shock, anger, and betrayal, James sought support from loved ones and began couples therapy with Sarah. Together, they faced the underlying issues in their marriage, leading to a pivotal decision point. Through intense, heartfelt conversations, they chose to rebuild their relationship, committing to forgiveness and open communication. Their journey of healing strengthened their bond, teaching them valuable lessons about love and resilience. In the end, they found renewed hope and a stronger, more committed relationship, ready to face the future together. Hello, my friends. I hope all you are fine. This is Narrative Stories channel. Let's start this story. James and Sarah's love story began like a fairy tale. Their wedding day was a joyous celebration, surrounded by family and friends who cheered for their union. The sun shone brightly as they exchanged vows, promising to cherish each other forever. Their honeymoon was a blissful escape, filled with laughter and intimate moments that cemented their bond. Over the years, they created countless memories, vacations exploring new places, family gatherings where their laughter echoed, and quiet evenings at home, sharing dreams and aspirations. James, a dedicated husband, and Sarah, a loving wife, built a life that seemed picture-perfect. James often reflected on how fortunate he was to have Sarah in his life. Their 15 years together were filled with mutual respect, deep affection, and unwavering support. They were partners in every sense, facing challenges head-on and celebrating successes with equal fervor. Their home was a sanctuary, a place where love and trust flourished. James's heart swelled with pride as he thought about their journey, the moments that defined their relationship, and the future they envisioned together. Little did he know, the foundation of their perfect marriage was about to be shaken to its core. It started with small, almost imperceptible changes. Sarah began staying late at work more frequently, claiming increased workloads and important projects. Her phone, once casually left on the counter, was now always with her, and she took calls in hushed tones. James noticed her paying more attention to her appearance, buying new clothes, and wearing makeup more often. Initially, he brushed off these changes, attributing them to her career ambitions and personal growth. After all, he trusted Sarah completely and had no reason to doubt her fidelity. As weeks turned into months, the subtle changes became harder to ignore. Friends and family occasionally hinted at Sarah's unusual behavior, their comments sowing seeds of doubt in James's mind. He found himself replaying conversations, analyzing Sarah's actions, and feeling an unsettling sense of unease. The loving, carefree moments they once shared were now overshadowed by suspicion. Determined to dispel his fears, James decided to investigate further. He hoped to prove his doubts wrong, clinging to the belief that their love was unshakable and that Sarah would never betray him. One evening, while Sarah was in the shower, James noticed her phone buzzing on the nightstand. He hesitated, then picked it up, intending to respect her privacy, but driven by an urgent need to know the truth. His heart sank as he read through the messages between Sarah and her co-worker, revealing an intimacy that went beyond mere friendship. The shock of betrayal hit him like a physical blow. When Sarah emerged from the bathroom, James confronted her, his voice trembling with hurt and anger. At first, Sarah denied everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. Finally, through tears, she confessed to the affair. James felt as if his world had collapsed. The emotions were overwhelming: shock, anger, sadness, and an intense sense of betrayal. He couldn't understand how the woman he loved and trusted had been unfaithful. Sarah, equally distraught, explained how the affair had started: long hours at work, growing close to her co-worker, and ultimately crossing a line she never intended to cross. She expressed deep regret, pleading for James's forgiveness. But James was lost in a sea of conflicting emotions, struggling to comprehend how their seemingly perfect marriage had reached this devastating point. In the days following the revelation, James felt a profound sense of isolation. Unable to process his emotions alone, he confided in his best friend, Mark. Mark listened patiently, offering a shoulder to cry on and practical advice. James also reached out to his sister, Emily, whose compassionate support helped him navigate the initial shock. Despite the comfort from loved ones, James grappled with the reality of the betrayal, his mind swirling with questions and doubts. The once clear path of his life was now clouded with uncertainty and pain. Desperate to understand the root causes of the affair, James and Sarah decided to attend couples therapy. Their therapist guided them through painful but necessary conversations, revealing underlying issues in their marriage that had gone unnoticed. Sarah admitted to feeling neglected and unappreciated, while James acknowledged his tendency to become absorbed in work, inadvertently neglecting their relationship. These sessions were emotionally draining, but crucial in uncovering the cracks that had led to infidelity. Slowly, they began to see a glimmer of hope, realizing that healing was possible if they were both willing to put in the effort. James stood at a pivotal crossroads, faced with the daunting decision of whether to forgive Sarah, remembered the love and happiness they had shared. On the other, the pain of betrayal was still fresh and raw. James knew that either choice would come with its own set of challenges and consequences. He spent sleepless nights contemplating his future, torn between his heart and his mind. In an effort to gain clarity, James and Sarah had a series of intense, heartfelt conversations. They revisited their past, discussing what had gone wrong and how they had drifted apart. Sarah was vulnerable and honest, expressing deep remorse for her actions and a sincere desire to make amends. James, though still hurt, found himself opening up about his own shortcomings and fears. These conversations were painful but necessary, revealing their true feelings and helping them understand each other better. Through this process, they both began to see the possibility of a path forward. After much soul-searching, James made the difficult decision to forgive Sarah. It wasn't an easy choice, but he believed in the strength of their bond and the possibility of redemption. Together, they committed to rebuilding their marriage, taking concrete steps to restore trust and intimacy. They set aside regular time for open communication, shared activities, and date nights to rekindle their connection. They also continued therapy, both individually and as a couple, to address their emotional wounds and prevent future issues. Gradually, they began to heal, their relationship growing stronger and more resilient. As time passed, James and Sarah found themselves in a renewed relationship, one built on honesty, transparency, and mutual respect. The scars of the past were still there, but they served as reminders of their journey and the lessons learned. Their love had been tested and had emerged stronger for it. They appreciated each other more deeply and made a conscious effort to prioritize their marriage. The future, once uncertain, now looked promising, filled with hope and a renewed sense of commitment. They had faced a tremendous challenge and come out the other side, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. James often reflected on the journey of healing they had undertaken. He realized that facing challenges together had not only strengthened their bond, but also taught them valuable lessons about love and forgiveness. He understood the importance of resilience and the power of second chances. James was grateful for the support they had received and the steps they had taken to rebuild their marriage. He hoped their story would inspire others facing similar struggles, showing that it is possible to overcome even the deepest wounds with patience, effort, and a willingness to forgive. In the closing scene, James and Sarah are seen enjoying a quiet, happy moment together. They sit on their porch, holding hands and watching the sunset, a symbol of the renewed commitment and strength of their bond. The once stormy skies of their relationship have cleared, leaving behind a beautiful horizon filled with promise. Their journey has been one of pain and healing, but ultimately it is a testament to the enduring power of love. As the sun sets, they share a smile, knowing that together they can face anything the future holds. Thank you for being a part of Narrative Stories. Your support and engagement mean the world to us. We are committed to bringing you the best in storytelling. What kinds of stories would you like to see next? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Cheating wife comes home to find her lover unconscious and her husband gone without a trace. Nick and Jana Sill were out partying on Friday night. She was eager to have a good time and indulged a bit more than usual in her favorite wine. Lana, Jana's closest friend, and her husband Steve hosted the party and decided to kick things off with a game of truth or dare. They convinced 5 more couples to join, but some of the women were hesitant, especially because Lana could be a bit harsh. The game started calmly enough, with one woman making it clear she wouldn't do anything too wild like showing her bosom. Others agreed to keep the questions reasonable, but as the game went on and the drinks kicked in, the questions became more daring. One woman suggested that any inappropriate questions could be ignored. Eventually, it was Lana's turn again, and she asked Jana, "Truth or dare?" Jana chose truth. "Who was your best lover?" Lana asked. "I suppose it's Nick," Jana replied, influenced by the wine she had consumed. With a giggle, Jana added, "Just kidding." There was a collective sigh of relief. Lana teased Nick, saying, "Well, if you're not number one, you better fight for it." Nick's reaction was a mix of embarrassment and anger, evident from his flushed face. Jana quickly realized her mistake and tried to rectify it. She assured everyone she was just teasing Nick and that he truly was her best lover. Nick got up, muttered something about needing a beer, and left the game, not returning. Comments like, "Oh my God, Jana," and "Ouch, that's gotta hurt," filled the room. "I thought the dumb blonde stereotype was a myth, but damn, you just told your husband he's second best in front of everyone. Is he even second or is it worse?" Lana, supposedly Jana's friend, remarked. Jana attempted to get up, saying, "I was just kidding, damn it. I'm your friend," Lana suggested. They all helped calm Nick down, feeling the urgency to fix things. Even in her intoxicated state, Jana knew it wouldn't be easy to soothe her husband. She found Nick near the TV screen, not paying attention to the game. "I'm sorry, baby, I was just a little drunk. I thought it was funny, but clearly not. Please come back to the game, let me make things right," she pleaded. "No, just stay away from me. I'm leaving," he replied, standing up to say goodbye to others nearby. Lana approached Jana, asking, "Where's he going?" "Home. I need to apologize before he leaves. I messed up big time," Jana said, about to catch up with Nick. "Let him go, please. Right now, he doesn't want to hear anything from any of us," Jana said, tears welling in her eyes. "That idiot. Stay here, I'll go find him," Lana offered. "No, Lana, don't. You'll only make it worse," Jana pleaded. "We joke around all the time. What's his problem? You didn't cheat, so why is he so upset about being second?" Lana chimed in, trying to be supportive. But Jana's response wasn't what she expected. Instead of agreement, sadness and shame clouded Jana's expression. Lana immediately caught on. "Oh my God, Jana, you did it," she whispered. "Please don't say anything. If Nick thinks anyone else knows, my marriage will be over. Promise me, Lana." "Not a word, not even to Steve," Jana implored. "All right, I won't say a thing, but once you're sober, we need to talk," Lana agreed. "I need to go home. He probably won't talk to me, but I have to try," Jana murmured quietly as she headed towards the backyard gate. Lana returned, declaring, "I'm taking her home to make sure she gets there safely." By the time Lana caught up, Jana had already disappeared through the side door of her house. "Jana!" Lana called out, but Jana just waved and disappeared inside. Jana immediately went upstairs, changed into a nightgown, and climbed into bed. She reached out to touch Nick's shoulder, hoping for a reassuring kiss, but he remained still, unresponsive. Running her nails down his back, she tried to elicit some reaction, but he stayed motionless. She thought she saw a tear escape from his eye. In a final attempt to ease the tension, she whispered in his ear, "Honey, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I love you." But instead of acceptance, he snapped back, "Don't lie to me. I know what you said and what it means. Or just go to hell and leave me alone." With that, he got out of bed, stormed into his den, and slammed the door shut. Jana cried herself to sleep. Morning came late, the events of the night keeping her from her usual early start. The kitchen was bare, no coffee brewing, no dishes in sight. It was clear Nick had left in a hurry, avoiding a face-to-face encounter. Jana felt a deep sense of sadness. Her guilt weighed heavily on her, her mind replaying the hurtful truth she blurted out in a moment of drunken candor. Actually, no, she had said loud enough for everyone to hear. Their friends couldn't mistake the implication. It seemed far from a playful tease. She hoped that offering a genuine apology and sincere reassurance would convince her husband that her remark from yesterday didn't matter. Unfortunately, her apology was insincere. She was resolute in keeping this truth, as well as the reasons behind it, hidden from him and everyone else. Desperate to rectify her mistake, Jana decided to send her husband a message expressing her regrets about the previous night. "I'm so sorry about last night. With the kids on the way, I felt Lana's party was my last chance to unwind a bit. Admitting I went too far is an understatement. I was so out of it that I thought my behavior was amusing, maybe even playful. I believed I was teasing you, my dear hubby, as any wife would. But the look on your face made it clear I'd made a mistake." Lana chiming in with her own remarks is just her personality. She's unaware of our history and probably meant it in jest. "You know she holds you in high regard. Please don't blame her, baby. That's not what I intended. You're the best to me in every way. Forgive me for acting foolishly under the influence, failing to realize how my misguided attempt at humor could hurt you, my beloved. I love you with all my heart. Please come home or at least call me. I love you." With the coffee brewed, Jana sat at the table, holding her head in her hands. She repeatedly questioned aloud why she had said something so foolish. Her phone rang briefly, raising hope that it was Nick, but it turned out to be Lana. Jana initially ignored the call, but Lana called again shortly after, prompting Jana to answer. This conversation was inevitable. "Yes, Lana, what's going on?" Jana asked. "Last night you started to tell me something and then stopped." "It's not like Nick to react that way over an innocent joke," Lana said. "No, it's not what you think," Jana replied slowly. "I'm coming over," Lana decided. "No, that's not a good idea," Jana protested. "Just put on the coffee." "I'll be there in 10 minutes, Lana instructed, not waiting for a response before hanging up. 7 minutes later, Lana walked in through Jana's side door to find a cup of coffee waiting for her on the table, made just the way she liked it. "All right, spill it," Lana demanded. "Lana, I can't." "How long have we been best friends? Haven't I always had your back?" Jana pleaded, overwhelmed with guilt and needing someone to confide in. "First, swear to me you'll never breathe a word of this to anyone, not even Steve," Jana insisted. "Jana, I swear I won't tell a soul. This stays between us. Swear on your children's lives." "Oh Lord, what have you done, baby?" "All right, I swear. I swear on my children's lives I won't breathe a word of this to anyone," Lana vowed, making a solemn promise. "This happened 5 years ago, even before we moved here. The insurance company I worked for had a great year and threw a Christmas party a few days before the 25th. Nick was supposed to attend, but his brother had a small fire at his house, causing chaos. My husband and his truck were called to help. Despite my insistence that I didn't need to go, Nick urged me to enjoy myself with my colleagues while he went to assist his brother. I felt obligated not to miss out since I was the executive overseeing this year's holiday parties, including cleanup and office restoration afterward. I prayed that I had insisted on helping with the fire damage instead of getting ready for the party. I hesitated initially. I wanted to make my husband proud. The skimpy black dress, daring bra, and thong were meant to impress and show off as the hot wife. The outfit choice puzzled me since I didn't consider alternatives. My first mistake was deciding I still wanted attention from other men and wearing a provocative outfit. Even though Nick might be annoyed seeing how I dressed for the party, especially since I was going alone with a coworker. "Got it," Lana exclaimed. Lana quickly caught on, particularly with a coworker. Jana reiterated, "It was all much worse." "All right, spill it, girl. Tell me everything from the beginning, every detail," Lana demanded. Okay, damn, I've never said this out loud before. The party was typical. Everyone was merry, drinks were flowing, and some guys were taking advantage of single women under the mistletoe. As the night progressed, I found myself in the company of single girls, which wasn't surprising since my husband wasn't there and I was dressed provocatively. I realized what they were up to and should have put a stop to it, but I was already tipsy and relishing the attention. 2 guys in particular, Mark and Jake, kept pushing me to loosen up. They often made suggestive remarks, and to my shame, I sometimes responded in kind. Looking back, I understand I was too flirtatious with men at that time, and I regret not considering the consequences sooner. They kept urging me to do things that wouldn't pass my husband's approval. I knew what I was doing, and worse, I convinced myself that a little fun wouldn't hurt. After all, Nick would never find out, right? They led me to places where others couldn't see. The liberties I permitted escalated as the kisses grew more intense, and over time, my morals eroded. Their boldness increased as they realized my symbolic resistance vanished, especially when the likelihood of being caught decreased. Concealed from prying eyes, the men freely groped my body, and I encouraged them, fully aware of it. Worse, they knew it too. It was finally time to send everyone home. As the one in charge, it fell on me to usher them out, albeit after they assisted in cleaning up. With the place looking fairly restored, I switched off the lights and locked the main room before heading to my office to retrieve my belongings, purse, phone, and car keys. However, I hesitated for a moment, realizing I had likely crossed all permissible boundaries. Designated drivers were arranged for everyone except me, since Nick was supposed to be mine. The only viable solution for the evening was to call a taxi. Upon opening the door to my office and reaching for the switch, Mark seized my hand, preventing me from turning on the bright overhead light that could signal someone was inside. "Let's continue," he said, kissing me on the lips. Initially startled, I began to reciprocate. At that moment, a pair of arms enveloped me from behind, cupping both my bosom, while a firm hardness pressed against my clothed backside. It was Jake. As he began to rub against me, Mark took my face in his hands and kissed me deeply. Clearly intoxicated, their caresses aroused me greatly. Unfortunately, thoughts of my husband were far from my mind. I was too lost and consumed to consider the betrayal. "Looks like some bad guys want to play," I muttered, stuttering slightly. "We were hoping you'd say that," Jake responded, reaching out to switch on the desk lamp for sufficient light without revealing our presence to the outside world. Mark then closed and locked the office door. "I need to stress something here, something I doubt anyone, even you, would believe, but I swear to God it's the absolute truth. When I said I wanted to play, I didn't mean to have lovemaking with them." "You're right about that. Convincing anyone, especially Nick, will be near impossible," I explained. "Hell, the chances of anyone but me believing it are slim to none," Lana chimed in. "I know. I'm fully aware of that, but I need you to believe me. I really, really need you to believe me." "All right, baby, I believe you. I've seen firsthand how a little drink can make someone rationalize things like that," Lana reassured. "I just thought we'd keep kissing and fooling around while the door was locked. The only thing visible from outside is if the main light is on, so I figured I could have some gentle fun without any risk." I know how foolish it sounds now. Damn, I wish I could turn back time, Lana. I don't know if you've ever had two men try to seduce you, but the intensity of that feeling was overwhelming. Jana paused. "Actually, since we're sharing confessions, I have something to add later, but please continue," Lana interjected. "Okay." Despite my resistance, Mark continued kissing me, and I was so absorbed in him that I forgot about Jake until I heard his zipper. My dress rode up, and Jake almost had my rear exposed. Meanwhile, Mark took advantage of the situation too. That was the moment it dawned on me that these two were going to have their way with me. Well, there was a lot of groping first, but then the clothes started coming off. "Yours or theirs?" Lana asked, intrigued by her friend's tale. "Both," Jana continued. "The sensation of two men undressing you while consumed by desire was beyond anything I'd imagined." I weakly protested, saying, "No, I can't do this, no, I'm married," but within moments all I had left was a thong and heels. Being pleasured by two men was the most erotic experience of my life, but what came next surpassed it. They didn't want to stop, and I was in ecstasy. How could anyone compete with such an experience? We were so caught up that it didn't take long until we all reached the peak. It was the best lovemaking I'd ever had. When the intensity waned, thoughts of Nick flooded in, and the magnitude of my betrayal hit me. I pleaded with them to keep our encounter a secret. It was a huge mistake, and I knew my marriage would crumble if the truth emerged. They both promised to stay silent, but I couldn't shake the fear of my betrayal being exposed. Lana sank heavily into a chair. "Now it makes sense why you reacted that way yesterday. Did Nick ever find out?" Lana inquired. Jana burst into tears before she could respond. "If you need a break, it's okay," Lana offered. "No, I need to get it out while I still can," Jana insisted and continued. "I think they were both shaken by how upset I was, so they sincerely promised to keep my secret." That night, I avoided Nick. It was well past midnight when he returned home from helping his brother. The following days were tense. Nick sensed something was amiss, but I denied it until the New Year's party. I wanted to move past it, but I had committed to supervising this year's holiday parties, and I couldn't give Nick any reason to question my reluctance to attend. Jake was conspicuously absent, perhaps out of fear that his wife might suspect something. However, good old Mark was present and heavily intoxicated as usual. With his reputation as a player, I still can't comprehend how I allowed him, of all people, to come near me. Throughout the evening, I attempted to avoid Mark, but as the night progressed and he grew increasingly intoxicated, he became uncomfortably familiar with me. So much so that my secretary Cindy pulled me aside and cautioned, "Be careful, your husband is here this time." Her emphasis on "this time" did not escape my notice. My God, how many people suspect something? I tried to keep my distance from Mark, but by the end of the night, he seemed determined to flaunt my discomfort in front of my husband. When Nick went to the bar for some drinks, Mark seized the opportunity to approach me, grabbed my hand and insisted, "Come on, baby, you haven't danced with me yet." Panicked, I emotionally refused. As Nick returned from the bar with our drinks, Mark remarked, "You weren't so resistant at the Christmas party," gripping my hand, attempting to coax me into dancing with him. I recoiled and demanded Mark remove his hands from me. I was terrified, unsure of how much Nick had overheard. An embarrassed expression crossed my husband's face, quickly replaced by anger. In an effort to defuse the situation, I informed Mark that the bar was closing. However, he insisted on another drink. With Cindy nearby, I shot her a pleading look and signaled for her to take my place. Understanding my predicament, she gestured toward my husband, and then toward the door. I managed to usher Nick out before any further trouble ensued. I assured my husband that Mark was simply intoxicated, and I was relieved that Nick didn't escalate the situation as he easily could have. Back at home, Nick inquired, "What happened?" I attempted to dismiss it, blaming Mark's excessive drinking. However, Nick warned me that if Mark ever approached me again, he would take drastic measures. At breakfast, Nick was still mulling over the events of the previous night and questioned me about what had occurred. Cindy swiftly interjected, asking how she could have handled Mark better than me. Nick then pressed further, questioning why I had behaved strangely at the last party and if I felt guilty about something. He pieced it together, realizing that Mark being drunk couldn't explain his remarks. It was clear he didn't buy the excuse, and pressed me once more, this time with greater intensity. "Well, what happened at the Christmas party?" Feeling dejected, I broke down and confessed that I had gotten drunk and engaged in inappropriate behavior without going into specifics. Then Nick looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Did you have lovemaking with him?" He saw it in my eyes and grasped it even before I answered. There was no point in denying it, so I admitted that I had consumed too many drinks and felt ashamed that I had allowed it to happen. He was furious but didn't press for details, and I refrained from elaborating. Nick left me that day and refused to speak to me. We remained apart for 3 months without any communication. It was agonizing for me until he agreed to start conversing with me again. I pleaded with him at every opportunity to take me back, even suggesting an open hall pass to even the score. Eventually, he agreed to counseling. After several months of therapy, I began to sense that Nick was seeking a path to repair our marriage. I was elated that he seemed willing to reconcile, and I was determined to do whatever it took to salvage our relationship. I anticipated that he would inquire for more details, and I was terrified of what revealing the whole truth would do to him. But to my relief, he refrained from asking those questions. I was overjoyed that I didn't have to choose between lying and revealing the truth, although I realized that withholding the full story is essentially lying by omission. Ultimately, he agreed to reconcile, pledging to do everything possible to forgive me. However, there were conditions. Firstly, I had to sign a postnuptial agreement stipulating that I would receive minimal assets in the event of another infidelity. Another condition was that I resign from my job and we relocate. Additionally, he surprised me by presenting his own hall passes. Although I had suggested it in my desperation for him to agree without probing further, I signed an agreement granting him a couple of hall passes. I believe he needed them more to rebuild his bruised ego than anything else, as I doubt he ever used them. So I agreed to everything, including moving away from our friends and family, all to win back my husband. Fortunately, he was able to secure a lateral transfer in his company, and my background in insurance facilitated my job search. That's when we moved here. I never had to confess the full truth about my betrayal to him, and I remained faithful from then on. I'm sure you understand why I fear that if he knew everything, he would divorce me. That's why my mistake last night could potentially be disastrous. I must stick to the narrative that it was a tasteless joke misunderstood only by him, and that he is unequivocally the best thing in my life. Jana paused, letting her narrative sink in. My goodness, did you have a bacchanalia? I fantasized about that. Tell me again, how was it? Lana asked, eagerly, reveling in her friend's actions without grasping the peril it posed to the marriage. Damn it, Lana, I nearly lost my husband and I'm still at risk. Then, after a significant pause, Jana confessed, it was the most thrilling carnal encounter of my life. She added solemnly, I can never let Nick discover the truth, never. Okay, I understand why you'd say that. I also get that no man can compete with two. It beats my dirty story, Lana added. What did you do? Jana inquired. Okay, I need you to swear to me too. This stays between us. Steve would probably kick me out, Lana asserted, locking eyes with Jana. We have a pact. Nothing spoken here will ever be disclosed to anyone else. Jana reciprocated their mutual trust and then urged her friend to divulge. All right, it's your turn to spill everything. Lana initiated her narrative. Both of us. I've never vocalized this before either. We were planning a party with coworkers coming over for a swim and barbecue. That evening, Steve called me with an urgent issue regarding one of their major accounts. He personally managed this client and would be at least 3 hours late returning home. Ron, Steve's business partner, took it upon himself to step in for Steve and came over under the pretense of assisting me with preparations. He knew their key client had hired Steve, and that Steve needed to personally attend to matters at this client's office, which was about an hour and 10 minutes away each way. My husband is astute in business dealings, but one thing he lacks is discerning when a friend is deceitful. Man, Ron's a womanizer. He went through a divorce due to infidelity. Being single allows him to pursue his targets without concern for repercussions from a spouse. He had his sights set on me for a while, and I was aware of it. I should have alerted Steve, but I was easily swayed by Ron's flattery. I enjoyed the attention and would reciprocate, sometimes shamelessly, when Steve wasn't around. When Ron arrived to help, I was already in a bind. Instead of prepping our backyard, I spent the day lounging by the pool in a tiny bikini, awaiting Steve's return so I could start preparing for our party. I had a couple of margaritas and wasn't intoxicated, but I felt good. I should have gone inside and changed, but I didn't. Ron was clearly enjoying himself, and I relished in letting him watch. We began setting up the patio for our guests. Ron uncovered the grill and positioned it at the center of the patio for easy access. He checked the propane tank's gas levels and briefly lit the grill to ensure it was operational. Then we rearranged some chairs and tables, brought out the beer cooler, stocked the bar, and set up umbrellas. Our guests offered to bring additional holiday appetizers and sides. Once we finished, Ron made us margaritas and suggested we omit mentioning his assistance in preparing for Steve's meeting. We returned to the pool, and Ron commented on how he had worked up a sweat and how inviting the pool looked. Noticing he hadn't brought swim trunks, I teased that he could go without them, promising not to peek. Instead of continuing the playful banter, he began undressing. When he was down to just his boxers, he approached me and suggested we swim together, urging me to remove my swimsuit. I should have fled, but my intoxicated and reckless side prevailed. I stripped and impulsively dove into the pool. Ron joined me swiftly, holding me close. We were both unclothed, and I knew I'd let him have coition with me. I surrendered to him, exploring each other's bodies with caresses. It was incredibly wrong, yet undeniably pleasurable. Then Ron began touching me in a way Steve never had, sending me into a frenzy and granting me one of the most intense climaxes I'd ever experienced. The thrill of something new, so wicked and forbidden, transported me to ecstasy. After I calmed down, Ron suggested it was my turn to reciprocate and assist him in a quick finish. I complied, and we had a few more drinks. He insisted we not waste time and initiated a third round, possessing me fiercely. I was certain I'd be left with bruises as he reached his climax. I begged him to stop, and he approached me with a growl. Tears streamed down my face, feeling hurt and ashamed of betraying my husband. That night, I had to conceal my bruises from Steve, pleading with Ron not to disclose our encounter. He warned that if Steve discovered the truth, it would spell trouble for both of us. So we agreed to remain silent. Thankfully, he hasn't attempted to repeat our escapade. I'm relieved and resolved never to cheat again, regardless of the circumstances. However, we still communicate frequently and play golf together a couple of times each month. Since Ron tends to boast, I'm constantly anxious he'll reveal my secret. Steve mentioned that Ron keeps boasting about some wild woman he slept with but won't divulge her identity. I'm certain he's describing our encounter. The scoundrel is probably relishing in discussing his exploits with his oblivious spouse. If Steve ever learns that Ron is bragging about me, I fear he'll lash out at us both, and perhaps rightfully so, Lana finished, her voice trembling slightly. With these words, Lana concluded her harrowing tale. Later that day, Lana phoned Jana. "Hey friend, is everything back to normal?" "No, Lana. I haven't heard a peep from Nick. 5 years later, I thought we had moved past it. Have you ever heard about this guy Mark?" Lana inquired. "No, but my mom mentioned a coworker named Mark who got roughed up pretty bad when he left the bar. Do you think it was Nick?" "I'm not sure. I'm too scared to ask. Plus, I never want to reopen old wounds and cause him more pain. That's why it's so awful that I messed up last night and made him relive it all over again. I'm really worried he won't leave me." "Honey, he loves you too much. He's just hurt, reliving the fact that you cheated on him. Look, he's already forgiven you for what he knows about. He'll come around, trust me," Lana reassured. "I don't know, I'm terrified, Lana. We were planning to have kids. I had my last drink at your party, and then we were going to start trying to conceive. Now, I'm not so sure, Jana confided. Are you still planning to get pregnant? That's fantastic, Lana responded enthusiastically. I stopped taking the pills 3 days ago, but now maybe he's relieved we don't have a child. Who would want to complicate a divorce? Jana replied, tears streaming down her face. Listen, he's probably just passed out drunk in his motel room and we'll sleep it off. Don't worry, you'll soon be filled with little swimmers. Hey, my grizzly bear is calling. I gotta go. Hang in there. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Take care of Steve. We'll talk tomorrow. Bye. Both women drifted off to sleep. Jana spent a long, lonely night waiting on the sofa for her husband, who never returned. At 3 a.m, exhaustion finally overcame her, and she fell asleep. Nick rose early on Saturday, packed enough to stay away from home for several days, unwilling to face his wife. He headed to a diner for breakfast. As he sipped his coffee, he replayed the events of the previous evening in his mind. That damn woman. That damn woman. So I'm not her best lover? I guess that idiot Mark really knocked her socks off. Damn woman, he muttered angrily to himself. He glanced at his phone and powered it off. Let her figure out where I went, he mused. Nick poked at his ham and eggs, pondering his next move. A short-term question arose. What to do for the rest of the day? Then came the inevitable long-term one. Would he ever return home, or should he divorce this woman? Divorce. Lord, is this what it's come to? It doesn't sit right, but making a decision now when I'm furious might not be wise. Perhaps I should go back and confront that damn idiot again. No, I was lucky not to get caught last time. I need to think. Maybe hitting the golf course would clear my head. That's it. Everything I need is there already. Maybe there I can figure out what to do about my damn disrespectful wife. He joined another couple, having his own cart, which gave him more time to contemplate since he didn't feel like chatting with his cart companion. After the match, he had a couple of drinks, and the first bright spot of the day was seeing his favorite bartender, affectionately known as Susie Q. Susan Bryant was her real name. They always bantered back and forth, flirting playfully. Despite the flirtation, he never attempted to seduce her. Their suggestive exchanges were merely playful conversations. He assumed she was just trying to boost her tips, which indeed worked. Susie Q immediately sensed that Nick's usual carnal banter was absent, and that something was troubling him. When the other golfers left, Nick felt it was the right time and place to continue drinking. Noticing that it wasn't busy, Susie Q approached him. "What's wrong, honey? I miss your usual charm," she started. "Ah, the usual drama at home," he replied. "Come on, darling, you always say that. You can confide in me about anything, sweetheart. That's what I'm here for." Last night, during a game of Truth or Dare, my wife announced to me and everyone else that I wasn't the best lover she's ever had, he confessed. Damn, is she upset with you or something? I don't believe for a second that's true about you. The way you flirt with me all the time gets me going, she chuckled. I wish you meant that. I need a hot woman to help me relax a bit, he lamented. Do you think I'm hot? She asked, giving him a seductive smile. Hell yes, but I know I'm just a customer and you're doing your job. I get it. I don't stand a chance with you, he replied. She looked him straight in the eyes and said, You do have a chance. This caught Nick off guard. I wish you'd take seriously that you have a chance. A few years ago, my wife messed up. She got drunk and cheated on me with some idiot. After a lot of soul-searching and therapy, I agreed to take her back, but under certain conditions. One of them was for me to have a couple of hall passes to even things out. She gave you free passes to be with other women? Is that for real? Asked Susie. That was the deal. It's even in writing, he confirmed. I'll never tell my husband he's not the best lover, whether it's true or not. It's just not something you say carelessly, she declared. Nick, I'm off at 5 if you want to cash in one of those passes. Be here, Susan said, observing more golfers entering the room before leaving Nick to ponder her proposition as she tended to her new customers. Nick thought to himself, God, I always thought she was just humoring me because I tip well. Maybe she was actually offering me something more. Well, Jana agreed to the passes, and Susie Q might be able to give me what I need to regain my confidence. It was 3 in the afternoon, 2 hours before her shift ended. Nick decided against sitting in a bar getting drunk and deliberating on his next move. Instead, he dropped 2 $50 bills on the counter, totaling $58 to settle the tab, waved to Susan and said, I'll be back. He couldn't shake Susie Q's best attributes from his mind. She possessed an eye-catching 36D bosom that drew everyone's attention. Susie Q herself was a stunning woman, several years his senior but didn't look it. To add to her allure, she had a voluptuous and appealing rear. Considering his options, he muttered to himself, Jana never felt the agony of betrayal, the unbearable pain I had to endure. Perhaps she wouldn't be so promiscuous if she had experienced what I did. To hell with it. I'm going to shower, change, and return to the bar. At 5 to see if Susie Q is serious or not. At 4:45 p.m., Nick returned to the bar, and Susie couldn't help but smile broadly. She poured him a whiskey and cola, placing it in front of him, and remarked, "After that last tip, this one's on me." She added, "Bill's here to take over the bar. Just give us a moment to close out the register and I'll be ready to go." I'm famished. Any ideas on where we'll dine? As she prepared to leave, Nick phoned and reserved a table at one of the city's finest restaurants. During dinner, he attempted to steer the conversation toward Susie, but she sought a more thorough explanation of why he chose to ask her out. He divulged everything he knew. She revealed only that she was divorced, had been a flirtatious wife, and that this contributed to the demise of her marriage. After dinner, they ventured to a dance club, had a few drinks, and danced. During the third dance, with her holding him tightly, she proposed, "Listen, I understand you're trying to be a gentleman, not rushing straight into bed, but I've made my intentions clear. How about we leave here together?" Without further debate, the bill was settled, and they headed to her apartment. "Care for a drink while I slip into something more comfortable?" she inquired. Nick simply smiled and accepted her offer. As she disappeared into the bedroom, his breath caught in his throat. He managed to utter, "My God, you're stunning." She emerged wearing a Steelers jersey and nothing else. She reached up, placing her hands on the back of his head, drawing him into a passionate kiss. "I'm glad you approve," she murmured, as she guided his hand to her most carnal area. Susie led him toward the bed, kissing him fervently and disrobing him along the way. "Would you consider staying the night? We need some extra time, as I hope you'll explore every carnal possibility," she purred seductively, reclining on the bed. They passionately caressed and stimulated each other. He had never encountered a woman who derived such pleasure from pleasuring a man. They reached climax simultaneously. "Did you enjoy yourself?" she inquired. "It was incredible, truly amazing," he replied, struggling to find the right words to encapsulate the experience. "I'm thrilled you had a good time, but the same rule applies to guys. Promise me, never tell your woman she's not the best," she added. Nick chuckled. "Got it. Lie down, I'll grab us some glasses. We'll regroup, then I'll sort you out again," she instructed. Her flawless bare backside swayed enticingly as she returned to the kitchen. Nick couldn't help but be mesmerized by her seductive movements. After allowing him time to recover, Susie began gently massaging his entire body. This round lasted a bit longer, which suited them both just fine. They reached their climax once more. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" she inquired. "No, never." "Well, maybe I fantasized about it, couple of times while Jana and I were carnal, but it felt a bit awkward. Usually after a day on the field and some playful banter, I'd be in the shower at home, thinking about this," he confessed, nodding toward her impressive bosom. Susie giggled, then added, "I never thought it would actually happen either. I fantasized too, imagining how you'd make me feel. In reality, it's so much better, isn't it?" "Yes, much better. Please stay with me today. I know this is probably a one-time thing, so let's make it special." "It's been a while since I woke up next to a man," she requested. Nick nodded and Susie Q grinned. After recharging sufficiently, she said, "I hope you're ready for the final round." No further encouragement was needed. The next morning, Nick awoke to the aroma of bacon. Susie Q had already prepared coffee and breakfast. As he strolled into the kitchen fully dressed, he asked, "Is all this necessary?" "It's okay. I wanted to go all out," she reassured him with a smile. "Susan," he began, "don't apologize. I know you still love your wife. I'm mature enough to understand. I wanted you just as much as you wanted me last night," she interjected, cutting off his apology. "Besides," she continued, "I'm not cut out for monogamous relationships, which is actually why I got divorced." "I thought it was your husband that—" "He was the biggest fool alive," Nick replied. "He was basically an idiot and had issues with being faithful, but he had his moments. We mutually decided we didn't want to be married." "But that's not your style, is it?" she asserted more than asked. "No, it's not. Look, I need to head home and have a serious talk with my wife." "I'm fine, really. I thoroughly enjoyed last night," she assured him. "Finish the breakfast I made for you. From now on, we'll just be naughty friends again, teasing each other at the club," Susan declared. After finishing his meal, Nick stood up, pulled her close, and kissed her passionately, reigniting her arousal. "I'm off," he said as he headed toward the door. "If you ever need another hall pass, cash it in with me," she added. "You'll be my first choice," he replied with a wave goodbye. Sunday morning, Jana, feeling sleepy and deprived of rest, was awakened by Lana's call. Hey there, any word from Nick? No, Jana. Sorry, we haven't heard anything either. Steve's starting to ask questions. He thinks Nick's reaction was too intense for just some teasing. You didn't mention it, did you? Please tell me you didn't, Jana pleaded. No, I promise. Don't worry, I won't breathe a word. It's probably just a hangover. Try not to stress too much, Lana reassured her. Easier said than done. Did he pack clothes or a shaving kit? He grabbed some stuff, toothbrush, razor, Jana replied. What about his suits? He usually wears them to work, right? I think they're all in the closet, Jana said. He's got work tomorrow, right? He'll be back today, I'm sure. When he does, shower him with love, Lana advised. But what if he doesn't return or says it's over? Jana let her worst fears surface. That doesn't make sense. He's not going to end things now, after forgiving you. He'll cool off and come home. You might have to swallow some pride, but do what it takes, Lana encouraged. I just want him back so I can show him how much I love him. I think he's pulling in. Gotta go, Jana said, ending the call. When Nick arrived, Jana was already seated at the kitchen table. We need to talk, he said, causing Jana to gasp, half expecting him to end things. You tore my heart out. All those awful images of you with that guy came flooding back. To hear I wasn't your best lover, it felt like your date was more than just a joke, he started. Jana seized the moment, repeating most of what she'd said in her Saturday morning message, hoping to sway him back home. Baby, that's not what I meant. I was drunk, thought I was joking, playing a prank. I wasn't thinking about the past. I was just teasing, like any wife would. Nobody thought I was serious. Even Lana's comment was just in jest. She's been calling, apologizing, feeling awful, blaming herself for our problems, she explained. I don't know. It felt like more than just a joke, and I don't want Lana dragged into this. This is between us. Please tell me you didn't tell her anything else, Nick pressed, fearing Jana might spill the beans. No, baby, I didn't. Just between us, she assured, adding another layer to the lie. I swear that's not what I meant. You're everything to me. Let me make it right, Jana pleaded. Okay, let's say I believe you. But there's something else. On Saturday, I went to the club. When those memories came back, I was furious. I started to resent you for what happened. Even after 5 years, it still hurts, Nick confessed, leaving Jana frozen, uncertain of what came next. Afterward, I lingered at the bar, hoping to drown my sorrows. The guys I was with finished their drinks and left. Susie, the bartender, noticed my downcast mood since we'd always been friendly. She came over and asked what was wrong. I was already quite drunk, so I spilled about last night and how you didn't think I was the best. Susie offered, if I wanted to cash in one of my passes, she'd be off at 5. I went back to the course, playing a few more holes, trying to figure out if I wanted to use her to get back at you. I was also considering a divorce. When Nick mentioned divorce, Jana took a deep breath, not wanting to delay as he continued. I realized ending us wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I needed to alleviate the pain you caused. It may seem petty, but I wanted you to feel the same hurt. Just before the end of the workday, I returned to the bar. Susie understood without a word. Jana was speechless. The gravity of her husband's confession sank in, tears streaming down her cheeks as he went on. We quickly made plans for the evening, including dinner and dancing. Then I spent the night with her. Nick felt ashamed. The free pass he used wasn't free at all. He wanted Jana to suffer, and he succeeded, but the emotional toll on both of them was high. Oh my God, Jana exclaimed, rushing to the bedroom and locking the door. Nick believed trying to talk with her now would be fruitless, so he went to the utility room for his work clothes. After changing, he went outside, started the lawnmower, and began working on the lawn. Wanting to prolong his time away, he also mowed their elderly neighbor's yard, a task he often did. While washing his truck, he noticed her car was gone. He figured she must have left while he was mowing the neighbor's grass. Soon after, Jana returned, parked the car, and emerged with a small bag. Spotting her husband, she didn't approach him but headed inside instead. He assumed she might have dashed off to the store. After completing her tasks, it was 5 p.m, and Nick finally conceded that he had run out of excuses to delay going back inside. Jana was in the kitchen, seemingly preparing dinner, her eyes betraying hours of tears. Did you go to the store? I saw you with the bag, Nick inquired. No, just some things from the pharmacy that I left in the car yesterday while I was out searching for you. Where were you? He persisted. It doesn't matter, she replied. It does matter, he pressed on. I went to your golf club. I wanted to talk to her, Susan, Jana confessed. Jana, that's not going to happen, Nick reassured her. Then she confessed she wasn't keen on being exclusive herself. She also mentioned she was certain you were in love with me. I love you, Nick affirmed. That's not the issue, he added. She also asked if I truly said you weren't my best ever in front of our friends. When I nodded, she questioned whether I was in my right mind to say something like that, or just being foolish. I told her I meant it as a joke. She said there's nothing funny about that, especially in front of friends. Damn. Are you ready for her advice? When I said yes, she shared a couple of insights. What were they? Nick inquired. I can't disclose it. It's a secret pact among women, Jana replied, a smile finally breaking across her face. After the truth or dare fiasco, Susan shared that a woman should always uplift a man's ego, particularly in public. Tell him, and others too, that he's the strongest, the most handsome, the smartest, and tops the list as the best lover in the world. Just like you love to hear that you're the smartest, most beautiful, hottest, most loving wife there is. It doesn't have to be entirely true. It's his belief that you see him that way that matters. He wants to be your hero. Let him. Yes, and one more thing, look at him with adoration in your eyes. I'm just saying, don't let him know our secret, or it will only make things worse, she added with a sly smile. Baby, I'm at a loss for words, Nick began, attempting to steer the conversation back to civility. Before anything else is said, answer me. Do you still want to stay married? I love you, and I'm certain I want us to remain together. But Friday shattered me, nearly as much as it did 5 years ago. My ego needed a boost, and fueled by drinks on Saturday, my wounded pride led me to exploit the promise you made when we agreed to stay married. I understand what I promised. 5 years have gone by, and I thought we no longer needed to settle the score. Baby, he started, but Jana cut in. No, don't apologize. I made this agreement. I just didn't anticipate how much it would hurt if you chose to act on it. Nikki, I'm so sorry for causing you this unbearable, enduring pain. I feel awful imagining you in her bed, doing to her what should only be done with me. This mess we're in is my fault. I have to own up to it. I'll accept the consequences of my mistake. I just want to remain your wife. Instead of a verbal response, Nick opened his arms and Jana rushed into them, embracing him desperately. Nikki, are we okay now? I agreed to a few hall passes, but I don't think I can handle it if you're going to continue with this bartender. Only you know the answer for sure, since I never asked for details about when it happened. I was too devastated to ask at the time, even during our counseling sessions. I didn't inquire if there was more. I suppose I didn't want to know if it was worse than what I already knew, the thing I was going to divorce you over. I wanted your actions to be a forgivable mistake. Was there more to it than I already know? Jana gasped, struggling to maintain composure and avoid breaking down. She mentally weighed each possible answer and its potential consequences. Was there more? What haven't you told me? Nick asked, his tone irritated yet tinged with fear. The moment of truth had arrived. Jana confessed to her drinks-induced, lust-driven bacchanalia, which provided her with the most fulfilling carnal experience of her life, that she cheated with 2 men, not just one. She was certain that revealing this fact would likely lead to losing her husband, or she must summon every ounce of strength, look him squarely in the eye, and lie convincingly. Jana had been pondering how to answer this direct question for 5 years. She reasoned that disclosing everything would inflict even greater pain on Nick and likely end their marriage. Neither option was acceptable to her. She concluded that this would be her burden to bear, a sacrifice she must make to salvage her marriage and shield it from unnecessary agony. Though initially taken aback, her response came promptly and didn't seem fabricated. He had no clue she'd been preparing for this moment for so long. She lied as if her life depended on it. No, my love, I gave that idiot access to my body once. Let's call it even. We both need to let this go, or it will destroy our marriage. If you can truly forgive me and let go of my past mistake, I won't breathe a word about your encounter with Susan. I need this to be over. Do we understand each other? She pleaded with her eyes. Yes, I need it to end too. What we did to each other caused immense pain. I agree that if we keep dwelling on it, we won't survive. I don't need passes anymore, he said. I love you, he continued. I love you more than you realize. I'll never again make you doubt that you're my best at everything, she replied. Both of them set aside the events of the previous weekend and those from 5 years ago. There would never again be a reason to dredge up a malignant past. In the days following their reconciliation, best friends Jana and Lana continued to confide in each other. They both agreed they needed to bury the truth of the past for their marriages to thrive. They pledged to never speak of their past indiscretions or their consequences again. An unexpected outcome of Jana and Nick's conflict was that Lana woke up to the dangerous path she was on, and it scared her. She intentionally changed her interactions with other men. Steve noticed the change in Lana's behavior and questioned her about it. She explained that she realized she had been taking him for granted and was determined to fix their relationship. Steve also noticed an increase in the frequency and intensity of their carnal encounters. Was Susie Q's wise advice passed on to Lana? 3 months after their reconciliation, Jana's birth control failed, and she became pregnant. Nick was overjoyed. Their new chapter as a loving family began without looking back. A year after the Truth or Dare incident, Ron got blackout drunk while golfing with Steve and revealed his affair with Lana. Steve's reaction was immediate. He punched Ron, knocking him to the ground. Ron's golf bag was thrown off the cart, leaving him on the 16th tee. Returning home, Steve confronted Lana, who immediately confessed and begged for forgiveness. Steve moved out for several months, weighing his options. Ron and Lana had agreed that it would be detrimental if Steve found out about the affair. Ron accepted a settlement from Steve, regretting his actions. Lana's ordeal scared Jana, but Lana managed to survive the divorce and start anew as a single mother. Years later, Lana met a man she had previously encountered at a work convention. They started dating, got married, and relocated to his home state. The once close friendship between Jana and Lana suffered due to deceit, now reduced to occasional Christmas cards and random phone calls. Only 4 people knew the truth about Jana's indiscretion. The only one who could threaten Nick and Jana's marriage was Jana herself, and she vowed never to do so.
Welcome back to Cheating Tales Lab. We've got a brand new story lined up for you today, and we're thrilled to have you here. We hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Gregory Reed's Toyota Camry rolled to a stop in front of his modest 2-story home, the engine's low rumble fading into the quiet suburban afternoon. The history teacher's fingers drummed on the steering wheel, a mix of excitement and fatigue coursing through him. The conference had wrapped up early, a stroke of luck that allowed him to surprise Natasha with his unexpected return. As he killed the engine, Gregory's eyes narrowed at the sight of an unfamiliar Audi parked in their driveway. Its sleek lines and polished surface seemed out of place next to Natasha's practical sedan. "Huh," he muttered, climbing out of his car. Maybe Linda from next door got a new ride. The thought felt hollow even as it formed, a feeble attempt to rationalize the unease growing in his gut. The house was quiet as he entered, the silence broken only by the soft thud of his bag hitting the hardwood floor. Gregory paused, listening intently. There it was, muffled voices drifting down from upstairs, barely audible but unmistakably present. His footsteps were deliberately slow and soft as he approached the stairs, each creak of the floorboards sounding like a thunderclap in the stillness. At the bottom of the staircase, Gregory tilted his head, straining to make out the words. Natasha's voice, low and sultry, reached his ears. "I can't wait to see you tonight, baby. It's going to be wild." The words hung in the air, each syllable a dagger to Gregory's heart. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not after 14 years of marriage. His mind raced, searching for an innocent explanation, but finding none. With each step up the stairs, the reality of the situation became harder to deny. He found Natasha in their bedroom, phone pressed to her ear, a coy smile playing on her lips, a smile he hadn't seen directed at him in months. "Natasha?" His voice cracked, betraying the turmoil within. She whirled around, eyes wide with shock, the smile vanishing instantly. "Greg, I thought you weren't due back until tomorrow." Her voice was higher than usual, tinged with panic. "Clearly," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The room seemed to spin around him, the familiar surroundings suddenly alien and hostile. "Who were you talking to?" Natasha's face hardened, her initial surprise morphing into defiance. The transformation was so sudden, so complete, that Gregory wondered if he'd ever really known her at all. "It's none of your business, Greg," she spat, her tone dripping with contempt. "None of my business? You're my wife, for Christ's sake." The words exploded from him, fueled by a mixture of pain and incredulity. How could she stand there, in the bedroom they shared, and tell him this was none of his business? "Oh, grow up," Natasha sneered, rolling her eyes. The gesture was so dismissive, so callous, that Gregory felt as if he'd been physically struck. "Did you really think I was going to be satisfied with your boring, predictable life forever?" Gregory staggered back as if he'd been slapped, his mind reeling. "What are you saying?" The question was unnecessary. He knew exactly what she was saying. But some part of him, the part that still clung to the memory of their wedding day, of whispered promises and shared dreams, needed to hear it out loud. Natasha's laugh was sharp and cruel, a sound Gregory had never heard from her before. I'm saying I've found someone who actually excites me, someone who isn't afraid to live a little. She tossed her hair back, a gesture of defiance and superiority. You're having an affair? The words felt like ash in Gregory's mouth, bitter and choking. Affairs are for bored housewives, Natasha spat, her eyes flashing with a mixture of anger and what looked disturbingly like triumph. I'm embracing life. And tonight, I'm embracing my new lover. Gregory's mind reeled. This couldn't be happening. Not after 14 years of marriage. Not to him. He'd been a good husband, hadn't he? Faithful, supportive, loving. Where had it all gone wrong? You can't be serious, he managed, his voice hoarse. You're not going anywhere. Natasha laughed again, the sound grating against Gregory's nerves. Oh, sorry, but I promised him a wild night. And unlike you, I keep my promises. The barb struck home, twisting in Gregory's chest like a knife. If you walk out that door, Gregory said, his voice shaking with barely contained rage, our marriage is over. 14 years, Natasha. Gone. It was meant to be an ultimatum, a line in the sand. But even as he said it, Gregory knew it was futile. Natasha shouldered past him, pausing only to grab her purse from the dresser. Maybe you should have made those 14 years count for something, she tossed over her shoulder, her words dripping with disdain. The front door slammed, the sound echoing through the house like a gunshot. Gregory stood frozen in the bedroom, the suddenly too large space mocking him with its emptiness. Natasha's laughter, cruel and triumphant, seemed to linger in the air, a ghostly reminder of how quickly his world had crumbled. As the reality of the situation began to sink in, Gregory felt his knees buckle. He sank onto the edge of their bed, and buried his face in his hands. How had he not seen this coming? How had he been so blind? The questions swirled in his mind, each one bringing a fresh wave of pain and disbelief. Outside, the sound of an engine roaring to life cut through his thoughts. Natasha's car, or perhaps the mysterious Audi, pulling away, carrying her towards her new life, her new lover, leaving Gregory behind with nothing but the shattered remains of the life he thought they'd built together. Sleep eluded Gregory that night, each tick of the bedside clock a mocking reminder of his solitude. He tossed and turned, his mind a whirlwind of memories and questions. The bed, once a sanctuary of comfort and intimacy, now felt vast and cold. How long had this been going on? How could he have been so blind? The questions circled endlessly, each one bringing a fresh wave of pain and disbelief. As the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, Gregory dragged himself out of bed. His reflection in the bathroom mirror was a stranger, hollow-eyed and haggard, with stubble shadowing his usually clean-shaven jaw. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to shock himself back to reality. But reality, he was learning, was a cruel and unforgiving thing. Downstairs, the kitchen stood silent, devoid of the usual morning bustle. No coffee brewing, no gentle clink of spoons against cereal bowls, no murmured conversations about the day ahead. Just emptiness and the harsh light of day that seemed to illuminate every crack in the facade of his marriage. Gregory's hands shook as he poured himself a cup of coffee, the bitter liquid a poor substitute for the comfort he craved. He needed answers, and he knew where to start looking. The home office had always been Natasha's domain, a space he respected out of trust and a belief in privacy within marriage. Now, that respect felt like a cruel joke, a weakness she had exploited. With a deep breath, Gregory pushed open the office door. The room was neat and organized, just as Natasha always kept it. But now, every orderly stack of papers, every carefully arranged knick-knack, seemed to mock him. He began rifling through drawers, searching for anything that might shed light on her betrayal. In the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, hidden beneath a stack of old tax returns, he found what he was looking for. credit card statements, carefully concealed from their joint account. His eyes widened as he scanned the charges: expensive restaurants, hotel stays, lavish gifts, all dated back months, possibly longer. Jesus, he muttered, sinking into the office chair. The affair hadn't just been going on for weeks or months. This was a long-term deception, a carefully orchestrated betrayal that spanned a significant portion of their marriage. The realization hit him like a physical blow, leaving him breathless and nauseous. As he sat there, trying to process the magnitude of Natasha's betrayal, something caught his eye, a faint glow coming from beneath a stack of papers on her desk. Gregory's hand trembled as he reached for it, already knowing what he would find. A burner phone. Of course, he should have known. It was almost comically cliché, like something out of a bad detective novel. But there was nothing funny about the sick feeling in his stomach as he turned it on. The screen lit up, revealing a cascade of text messages. His stomach churned as he scrolled through them, each one more intimate and explicit than the last. Pet names, inside jokes, plans for rendezvous, a whole secret life laid bare in digital form. And there, repeated over and over, was a name: James Humphrey. Gregory's breath caught in his throat. James Humphrey, Natasha's co-worker, the man Gregory had shared drinks with at the company Christmas party just months ago, the man who had shaken his hand, called him buddy, all while secretly carrying on an affair with his wife. The betrayal was suddenly, horrifyingly personal. Memories flooded back. Natasha's increased hours at work, her sudden interest in after-work drinks with colleagues, the way she and James had laughed together at that Christmas party. It all made sickening sense now. How many times had he stood by, smiling and unsuspecting, while they exchanged knowing glances? How many of their conversations had been laced with double meanings, inside jokes at his expense? Gregory's world, already teetering on the edge, came crashing down around him. He felt as if he were falling, spiraling into an abyss of betrayal and deceit. The room spun around him, the familiar surroundings suddenly alien and hostile. He barely made it to the bathroom before he was violently sick, his body purging itself as if it could somehow expel the pain and humiliation along with the contents of his stomach. As he slumped against the cool porcelain, Gregory felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. The initial shock was passing, replaced by a cold, hard anger. He thought of his students, of the lessons he taught them about resilience in the face of adversity, about standing up for what was right. It was time to practice what he preached. With shaking hands, he reached for his phone. He had calls to make, plans to set in motion. Natasha might have betrayed him, but he'd be damned if he let her destroy him. As he dialed the first number, Gregory felt a determination settle over him. The battle for his future was just beginning. Morning found Gregory slumped at the kitchen table, staring blankly at his phone. The house around him was silent, the usual morning bustle replaced by an oppressive stillness that seemed to mock his solitude. He'd called in sick to work, unable to face his students in this state. The thought of standing in front of a classroom, discussing the great events of history while his own life lay in ruins, was more than he could bear. His mind raced with possible courses of action, each one more drastic than the last. Confront Natasha at her office? Track down James and demand an explanation? Simply pack his bags and disappear? The options swirled in his head. A dizzying array of potential futures, none of them resembling the life he'd thought he had just days ago. The buzz of his phone startled him out of his reverie. It was Michael Roy, his friend since college, and now a respected lawyer. Gregory had reached out to him in a moment of desperation the night before, his message a garbled mix of shock and plea for help. "Hey, Greg." Michael's voice was calm and steady, a lifeline in the chaos of Gregory's thoughts. "How are you holding up?" Gregory let out a bitter laugh, the sound harsh in the quiet kitchen. "How do you think?" "Listen," Michael said, his tone shifting from friendly to professional. "I know you're hurting, but we need to approach this logically. Have you confronted Natasha again?" "No," Gregory admitted, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "She didn't come home last night. The words hung in the air, a stark reminder of how quickly his life had unraveled. "Good," Michael said, and Gregory could almost see him nodding approvingly. "Don't confront her until we have a solid plan. For now, focus on gathering evidence. Bank statements, text messages, anything that proves the affair. We need to build a strong case." As Michael outlined the legal options, Gregory felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. This was no longer about saving his marriage. That ship had sailed the moment Natasha walked out the door. This was about survival, about emerging from this nightmare with his dignity and future intact. "What about the house?" Gregory asked, his eyes roaming over the familiar surroundings that now felt tainted by betrayal. "The savings? Our whole life is tied up together. One step at a time," Michael advised. "First, we document everything. Then we'll look at division of assets." "But Greg," his voice softened slightly, "are you sure you want to go through with this? There's no coming back once we start the legal process." Gregory's grip tightened on the phone. Was he sure? The question gave him pause. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to imagine reconciliation. Natasha returning, apologetic and remorseful. The two of them working through this, rebuilding their marriage. But the fantasy crumbled as quickly as it formed, replaced by the cold reality of Natasha's sneering face, her callous words. "I'm sure," he said, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. She made her choice. Now I'm making mine. After hanging up, Gregory set to work with a single-minded focus that would have impressed his students. He meticulously copied financial records, saved text messages, and documented every scrap of evidence he could find. It was like conducting research for one of his history lessons, except this time, the subject was the destruction of his own life. Hours passed in a blur of paperwork and digital forensics. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the kitchen, when Gregory's phone buzzed again. A text from Natasha. "Working late again. Don't wait up." Gregory stared at the message, a mix of anger and resolve coursing through him. The casual tone, the blatant lie. It was all so breathtakingly audacious. Did she think he was still in the dark? Or did she simply not care anymore? He thought of the scout law he'd learned as a boy. Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Values he'd tried to live by. Values he thought he shared with Natasha. Well, he thought bitterly, it was time to add a new trait to that list. Ruthless. Gregory's fingers hovered over the phone, tempted to fire back a response that would shatter Natasha's illusion of secrecy. But Michael's advice echoed in his mind. Don't confront her yet. Build the case. Be smart. With a deep breath, Gregory set the phone aside. He had work to do. Tomorrow, he would return to his classroom, face his students, and teach them about the great upheavals of history. And all the while, he would be planning his own revolution, the dismantling of the life he'd built with Natasha and the construction of something new from the ashes. As night fell, Gregory stood at the window, looking out at the quiet street. Somewhere out there, Natasha was with James, living her new life, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. Let her have her night, Gregory thought. The reckoning would come soon enough. With a smile, he turned away from the window and headed back to the office. There was still much to do, and the night was young. The Gregory Reed who had left for that conference just days ago was gone, replaced by a man tempered by betrayal and resolved to fight for his future. Gregory Reed stood at the kitchen counter, staring at the calendar on the wall. A week had passed since his world had imploded, each day a careful dance of normalcy and secret preparations. The red circle around today's date seemed to mock him, a stark reminder of the task ahead. He took a sip of coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. Natasha had always been the one to make the coffee. He pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the day's agenda. The bank would be his first stop. Gregory had spent hours poring over their financial records, calculating exactly half of their joint savings. It wasn't about greed. It was about survival. He'd be damned if he'd let Natasha's betrayal leave him destitute. As he rinsed his mug in the sink, Gregory caught sight of his reflection in the window. The man staring back at him was a stranger hollow-eyed, with a week's worth of stubble shadowing his jaw. He barely recognized himself. Good, he thought. Let Natasha come home to a stranger. Let her see what her betrayal had wrought. The drive to the bank was a blur, Gregory's mind racing with contingencies and worst-case scenarios. What if Natasha had beaten him to it? What if she'd already cleaned out their accounts? But the teller's smile was professional and untroubled as she processed his withdrawal. Gregory felt a twinge of guilt as he tucked the cashier's check into his briefcase. It felt like theft, even though he knew it was his right. His next stop was a real estate agent's office. The woman behind the desk, Sarah, greeted him with a warm smile that faltered slightly as she took in his haggard appearance. "Mr. Reed, are you all right?" Gregory managed a wan smile. "Just a rough week. You said on the phone you had some properties to show me." Sarah nodded, pulling out a folder. "Yes, I've got a few options that might suit your needs. You said you were looking for something modest, right? A fresh start." The words hit Gregory like a punch to the gut. A fresh start. As if 14 years of marriage could be wiped away that easily. "That's right," he said, his voice rough. "Something uncomplicated." As Sarah began to outline the various properties, Gregory found his mind wandering. He thought of the house he was leaving behind, the home he and Natasha had built together, the kitchen where they'd shared countless meals, the living room where they'd curled up on the couch, planning their future. All of it tainted now. All of it a lie. "Mr. Reed," Sarah's voice snapped him back to the present. "Did you hear me? I said this apartment might be perfect for you. It's paid month to month, so there's no long-term commitment." Gregory nodded, forcing himself to focus. "That sounds ideal. Can we go see it?" The apartment was small but clean, with a view of a nearby park. As Sarah pointed out its features, Gregory found himself imagining a life here, a life without Natasha, without betrayal. "I'll take it," he said, cutting Sarah off mid-sentence. She blinked, surprised. "Don't you want to think it over? Maybe discuss it with your wife." The question was like a knife twisting in his gut. Gregory managed a tight smile. "That won't be necessary. How soon can I move in?" An hour later, Gregory stood in the empty apartment, key in hand. The bare walls and vacant rooms seemed to echo with possibility. He took a deep breath, feeling something close to peace for the first time in days. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Michael, his lawyer friend. "Everything set?" Gregory typed a quick response. "All done. No turning back now." As he hit send, Gregory felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The pieces were in place. The stage was set. Let the next act begin. The house was quiet when Gregory returned, the silence heavy with anticipation. He moved through the rooms with purpose, gathering the last of his essential belongings. Each object he touched seemed to hold a memory, some bitter, some sweet, all of them painful now. The sun was setting when he heard the crunch of tires on the driveway. Gregory's heart raced, a mix of dread and determination coursing through him. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. This was it, the moment of truth. Natasha's keys jingled in the lock. Gregory positioned himself in the living room, the divorce papers spread out on the coffee table before him. He heard her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Coming closer. "Greg," Natasha's voice held a note of surprise. "What are you doing sitting in the dark?" Gregory reached out and flicked on the lamp beside him. Natasha blinked in the sudden light, her eyes widening as she took in the scene before her. "What's all this?" she asked, her tone dismissive. But Gregory could see the flicker of unease in her eyes. "Divorce papers," Gregory said, his voice steady. "I think it's time we stop pretending, don't you?" Natasha's laugh was sharp and brittle. "Don't be ridiculous, Greg. You're not going to divorce me." "No." Gregory raised an eyebrow. "Then perhaps you'd like to explain these?" He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. Bank statements, credit card bills, phone records. All the evidence of her affair laid bare. The color drained from Natasha's face. "You've been going through my things?" Her voice rose, indignant. "How dare you? How dare I?" Gregory's laugh was harsh. "That's rich, coming from you. How long has it been going on, Natasha? How long have you been screwing James behind my back?" Natasha's eyes flashed with anger. "You don't understand anything, Greg. James and I, we have something special. Something real." "Something real?" Gregory shook his head in disbelief. "Was our marriage not real enough for you? 14 years, Natasha. 14 years of trust and commitment. Or was that all a lie, too?" For a moment, Natasha's mask slipped. Gregory saw a flicker of something, regret, shame, cross her face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a cold determination. "You want to know the truth, Greg? Fine. I've been unhappy for years. You and your safe, boring life. It was suffocating me. James makes me feel alive." Each word was like a dagger to Gregory's heart, but he steeled himself, refusing to let her see how deeply she'd wounded him. "Well, I hope it was worth it," he said, his voice cold. "Because it's cost you everything. The house, our savings. I'm taking half of it all. It's only fair, don't you think?" Panic flashed across Natasha's face. "You can't do that." "I can and I have," Gregory replied. "It's all there in the papers. You might want to have your lawyer look them over." "Oh, wait. I guess that would be a conflict of interest for James, wouldn't it?" Natasha's composure crumbled. Her eyes darted around the room, as if searching for an escape. "This isn't fair, Greg. You can't just throw away 14 years of marriage." "I didn't throw it away," Gregory said, his voice quiet but firm. "You did, the moment you decided that your vows meant nothing." Natasha's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. For a moment, Gregory felt a pang of sympathy, but then he remembered the cruel laugh, the callous words she'd thrown at him a week ago. His heart hardened. "Sign the papers, Natasha," he said. "It's over." As Natasha sank onto the couch, her shoulders shaking with sobs, Gregory felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. The confrontation he dreaded for days was over. The truth was out. Now, all that was left was to pick up the pieces and move forward. Alone, the news of Gregory and Natasha's impending divorce spread through their social circle like wildfire. It seemed that everyone had an opinion, a side to choose, a judgment to pass. Gregory sat in his new apartment, staring at his phone as it buzzed with yet another message. This one was from Sarah, a mutual friend he and Natasha had known for years. "Greg, I just heard. I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do..." He sighed, tossing the phone aside. The messages had been pouring in all week, some supportive, some accusatory, all of them exhausting. It seemed that Natasha had been busy, spinning her own version of events. According to her, Gregory had been controlling, suffocating her with his mundane lifestyle. She painted herself as the victim, trapped in a loveless marriage, finally finding happiness with James. It was a compelling narrative, one that many of their friends seemed all too willing to believe. Gregory's phone buzzed again. This time, it was Michael. "How are you holding up?" his lawyer friend asked when Gregory answered. Gregory let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, just great. Half our friends think I'm some kind of monster, and the other half are too afraid of taking sides to even talk to me. But other than that, I'm peachy." Michael's voice was sympathetic but firm. "Remember what we talked about, Greg. Don't engage. Don't try to defend yourself. The truth will come out in time." "Easy for you to say," Gregory muttered. "You're not the one being vilified." After hanging up, Gregory paced the small apartment, feeling caged. He needed to get out, to do something, anything to escape the suffocating weight of his thoughts. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door, only to freeze as he opened it. Standing in the hallway, hand raised to knock, was Linda, his next-door neighbor from his old house. "Greg," she said, her eyes wide with surprise. I wasn't sure you'd be here." Gregory stepped back, gesturing for her to come in. Linda, what are you doing here? Linda fidgeted, clearly uncomfortable. I wanted to talk to you about, well, about everything that's happened. As they sat on Gregory's sparse furniture, Linda's eyes darted around the apartment, taking in the boxes still unpacked, the general air of impermanence. Greg, I don't know what to say. Natasha's been telling everyone such horrible things about you, but I couldn't believe it. Not the Greg I've known for years. Gregory felt a lump form in his throat. Here, finally, was someone who wasn't buying into Natasha's lies. Thank you, Linda, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You have no idea how much that means to me. Linda reached out, patting his hand. I know it's not my place, but is there any chance of reconciliation? Maybe if you two just talked. Gregory shook his head, a sad smile on his face. It's too late for that, Linda. The trust is gone. There's no coming back from what she's done. As Linda left, promising to stay in touch, Gregory felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, not all was lost. There were still people who believed in him, who saw through Natasha's lies. But the relief was short-lived. The next day, as Gregory walked into the teacher's lounge at school, he was met with uncomfortable silence. Conversation stopped abruptly. Eyes darted away from his. He poured himself a cup of coffee, acutely aware of the whispers starting up behind him. As he turned to leave, he caught sight of two of his colleagues, their heads bent close together. I heard he was cheating on her for years, one whispered. Poor Natasha. No wonder she left him. The words hit Gregory like a physical blow. He stumbled out of the lounge, barely making it to his classroom before the tears came. As he sat at his desk, struggling to compose himself before his students arrived, Gregory felt the full weight of his new reality crash down upon him. This wasn't just about losing Natasha. It was about losing his entire life as he knew it. But as the first bell rang and students began to file in, Gregory took a deep breath, straightening his shoulders. He may have lost much, but he still had his integrity. He still had the truth. And someday, somehow, that truth would come out. Until then, he would hold his head high and face each day with dignity. It was all he had left. Gregory Reed stood at the back of the crowded gymnasium, watching as the school board members shuffled papers and cleared their throats. The air was thick with tension, and Gregory could feel the anxiety radiating from his colleagues. Principal Dawson stepped up to the microphone. As you all know, our district is facing severe budget cuts due to the recent economic downturn. We've been asked to reduce our staff by 15% across all departments. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Gregory's stomach churned. As one of the newer teachers in the history department, he knew his position was precarious. We'll be evaluating each position carefully, Dawson continued, her voice straining to sound reassuring. Seniority will be a factor, but not the only one. Performance reviews, student feedback, and extracurricular involvement will all be considered. Gregory's mind raced. He'd always received positive reviews, and his students seemed to enjoy his classes. But would it be enough? The mortgage on his new apartment loomed large in his thoughts. As the meeting adjourned, Gregory found himself cornered by Tom Halsey, the department head. Greg, Tom said, his voice low, I won't sugarcoat it. You're on the bubble. If you want to keep your job, you need to make yourself indispensable. Take on extra duties, start a new club, anything to stand out. Gregory nodded, a lump forming in his throat. I understand, Tom. I'll do whatever it takes. As he walked to his car, Gregory's phone buzzed. A text from Michael, his lawyer. Natasha's contesting the settlement. She's hired Jameson. We need to talk. Gregory's heart sank. Stanley Jameson was known as a shark in divorce court, aggressive and ruthless. This was going to get ugly. The next few weeks were a blur of late nights and early mornings. Gregory threw himself into his work, volunteering for every committee and extracurricular activity he could. He started a debate club, organized a field trip to the state capitol, and even coached the JV basketball team when the regular coach fell ill. But even as he fought to keep his job, the specter of the divorce battle loomed large. Jameson was living up to his reputation, contesting every aspect of the settlement and dragging Gregory's name through the mud. One afternoon, as Gregory was grading papers in the teacher's lounge, he overheard two colleagues whispering. "I heard his wife left him because he was emotionally abusive," one said. "Can you believe it? He always seemed so nice." "Well, you never know what goes on behind closed doors," the other replied. "I feel bad for her, having to work with that James guy now that everyone knows about the affair." Gregory's pen froze mid-sentence. He'd known Natasha was telling her version of events, but he hadn't realized how far the rumors had spread. The urge to stand up and defend himself was overwhelming, but Michael's words echoed in his head. "Don't engage. Let the truth come out in its own time." With a heavy heart, Gregory gathered his things and left the lounge, the whispers following him down the hall. That night, as he sat in his sparse apartment, Gregory felt the weight of his challenges crushing down on him. His job was at risk. His reputation was in tatters, and the woman he'd loved for 14 years was doing everything in her power to destroy him. For a moment, he considered giving up. Maybe he should just let Natasha have what she wanted, move to a new town, start over completely. But then his eyes fell on a framed photo on his desk. It was from last year's graduation, showing him surrounded by smiling students. They were looking at him with admiration, trust, and respect. Gregory's jaw clenched. No! He wouldn't give up. He'd fight. For his job, for his reputation, and for the truth. Natasha might have betrayed him, but he wouldn't betray himself or the students who counted on him. With renewed determination, Gregory opened his laptop and began planning his next move. The law offices of Branson and Associates were imposing, all gleaming glass and polished marble. Gregory felt distinctly out of place as he followed Michael down the long hallway to the conference room. "Remember," Michael muttered as they approached the door, "let me do the talking. Jameson's looking for any reason to paint you as the bad guy." Gregory nodded, straightening his tie. He'd borrowed the suit from Tom Halsey, not wanting to appear in the same clothes he'd worn to the last mediation session. Every detail mattered now. As they entered the room, Gregory's eyes immediately locked with Natasha's. For a moment, he saw a flicker of something. Regret? Uncertainty? But then her face hardened, and she turned away. Jameson was already talking, his voice oily and condescending. "Now, Mr. Reed, I hope you reconsidered your position on the division of assets. My client has been more than generous, considering the circumstances." Michael's reply was calm but firm. "I'm afraid we'll have to disagree on that point, Mr. Jameson. In fact, we have some new information that might change the entire landscape of these proceedings." Gregory watched as Michael slid a manila folder across the table. Jameson opened it, his eyebrows rising as he scanned the contents. "Where did you get this?" Jameson demanded, his composure slipping. "That's not important," Michael replied smoothly. "What matters is what those documents show. Your clients have been less than truthful about their financial situation." Gregory's heart raced as he realized what was happening. During the discovery phase, Michael had uncovered discrepancies in Natasha and James's financial records. Digging deeper, they'd found evidence of embezzlement, company funds being siphoned off to finance their affair. Natasha's face had gone pale. "What is he talking about?" she hissed at Jameson. But Gregory wasn't listening to their frantic whispers. His mind was reeling with the implications of what he'd just learned. Natasha and James hadn't just betrayed him emotionally, they'd committed a crime. As the meeting devolved into chaos, with Jameson demanding to know the source of the information and Michael calmly deflecting, Gregory felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. For the first time since this nightmare began, he held the upper hand. But with that power came a heavy ethical dilemma. What should he do with this information? The right thing would be to report it to the proper authorities. But a darker part of him whispered that this was a leverage he needed to end this battle once and for all. That night, Gregory paced his apartment, weighing his options. The photo of his students caught his eye again, and he paused. What example would he be setting if he used this information for personal gain? How could he look those kids in the eye and teach them about integrity if he compromised his own? With a heavy sigh, Gregory picked up his phone. He'd make an anonymous tip to the company's board of directors. Let them investigate and handle it properly. As he dialed the number, Gregory felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He might lose some tactical advantage in the divorce proceedings, but he'd keep his conscience clear. And in the end, that was worth more than any settlement. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The company launched an internal investigation, putting Natasha and James under intense scrutiny. Gregory threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, determined to prove his worth to the school. He volunteered to lead a curriculum review committee, putting in long hours to modernize the history department's approach. He organized a school-wide mock election to coincide with the real one, engaging students in the democratic process in a way that had the whole school buzzing. One afternoon, as Gregory was leaving a particularly grueling department meeting, Tom Halsey pulled him aside. "I don't know how you're doing it, Greg," Tom said, shaking his head in admiration. "With everything going on in your personal life, most people would be falling apart. But you're thriving." Gregory managed a small smile. "I guess I just realized that my work, my students, they're what really matter. Everything else is just noise." Tom clapped him on the shoulder. "Well, keep it up. When the final decisions come down about staffing, I want to make sure your name is at the top of the keep list." As Gregory walked to his car, he felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. The road ahead was still uncertain, but he was on the right path. And for now, that was enough. The boardroom of Meridian Financial Services was silent, the tension palpable as the members of the Internal Audit Committee exchanged looks. At the head of the table, CEO Marcus Blackwell's face was a mask of barely contained fury. "Let me get this straight," he growled, glaring at the head auditor. "You're telling me that 2 of our employees have been embezzling funds for over a year, and we're just now finding out about it?" The auditor, a thin man named Jenkins, swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. The scheme was quite sophisticated, but once we received the anonymous tip and knew where to look, the evidence was overwhelming." Blackwell's fist came down hard on the table, making everyone jump. "I want names. Now." "Natasha Reed and James Humphrey, sir, from the Accounts Receivable Department." Across town, oblivious to the storm about to break over their heads, Natasha and James were having lunch at their favorite cafe. Natasha was in the middle of regaling James with her latest verbal sparring match with Gregory when her phone buzzed. "Probably Jameson again," she said with a roll of her eyes. "That man is relentless. I swear, if Greg would just—" Her voice trailed off as she read the message. All the color drained from her face. "Natasha?" James leaned forward, concern etching his features. "What is it?" She looked up at him, her eyes wide with panic. "We have to go. Now." But it was too late. As they stood to leave, 2 men in dark suits approached their table. "Ms. Reed? Mr. Humphrey? I'm Agent Thompson with the FBI. We need you to come with us." The next few days were a blur of interrogations, accusations, and crushing realizations. The evidence against them was insurmountable. Not only were they fired from Meridian, but they were now facing serious criminal charges. As Natasha sat in her lawyer's office, listening to him outline the potential plea deals and prison sentences, her mind wandered to Gregory. How had it all gone so wrong? The affair, which had seemed so exciting and liberating, now felt like the biggest mistake of her life. Meanwhile, Gregory was in his classroom, wrapping up a particularly engaging lesson on the civil rights movement when Tom Halsey appeared at the door. "Greg, can I see you for a moment?" Gregory's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment he'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. But as he stepped into the hallway, he was surprised to see Tom smiling. "I've got good news," Tom said. "Not only are we keeping you on, but we want to offer you a permanent position, full benefits, tenure track, the works." Gregory blinked, stunned. Are, are you serious? Tom nodded. Your work these past few months has been exceptional. The students love you, the parents respect you, and quite frankly, we'd be idiots to let you go. So, what do you say? For a moment, Gregory couldn't speak. All the stress, all the uncertainty of the past months came crashing down, replaced by an overwhelming sense of relief and vindication. Yes. Of course, yes. Thank you, Tom. As Gregory walked back to his classroom, his phone buzzed. It was Michael. It's over, Greg. Natasha's lawyer called. They're accepting our original settlement offer. With everything that's happened, she's in no position to fight anymore. Gregory leaned against the wall, letting the news wash over him. It was finally, truly over. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind. Gregory finalized the divorce, signed his new contract with the school, and even managed to find a slightly larger apartment that he could now afford. As he settled into his new life, Gregory found himself reflecting on the tumultuous journey he'd been through, the betrayal, the pain, the uncertainty. It had all shaped him in ways he was only beginning to understand. One afternoon, as he was preparing for his classes, an idea struck him. He quickly jotted down some notes, a spark of excitement growing as the concept took shape. The next day, he approached Tom with a proposal, an elective course on financial literacy and ethics. Tom raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting combination. Gregory nodded eagerly. I know it sounds odd, but think about it. So many of our students graduate without any real understanding of how to manage their money or navigate the ethical challenges of the adult world. This course could change that. Tom considered for a moment, then smiled. You know what? Let's do it. If anyone can make finance and ethics exciting for teenagers, it's you, Greg. As the new school year began, Gregory found himself standing in front of a packed classroom. Students had flocked to his new elective, curious about the unorthodox combination of topics. Welcome to Financial Literacy and Ethics 101, Gregory began, looking out at the sea of eager faces. In this class, we're going to learn about more than just balancing checkbooks and understanding credit scores. We're going to explore the complex relationship between money and morality, and how the choices we make can impact not just our bank accounts, but our integrity. As he launched into the first lesson, Gregory felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. He was using his pain, his experience, to help these young people avoid the pitfalls he'd encountered. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but in many ways, it was better. Months passed, and Gregory found himself settling into a new rhythm. His course was a hit, with students and parents alike praising its practical and ethical approach. He'd made new friends among his colleagues, joined a local hiking club, and even started dabbling in photography, a hobby he'd always wanted to pursue but never found the time for during his marriage. One evening, as Gregory was grading papers in his apartment, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. His heart skipped a beat as he read the message. I made a horrible mistake. Can we talk? Natasha. Gregory stared at the screen, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through him. For a brief moment, he was transported back to that night, where his world had fallen apart. Natasha's cruel laughter as she walked out the door, the crushing realization that their 14 years together had meant nothing to her. But as quickly as the memories came, they faded. Gregory looked around his apartment, at the stacks of student papers, the photography books on his coffee table, the hiking boots by the door. This was his life now, hard-won and honest. With a small, rueful smile, Gregory typed his reply. No, we can't. Goodbye, Natasha. He hit send, then blocked the number. For good measure, he turned off his phone entirely. Standing up, Gregory walked to the window and looked out at the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. A new day was ending, but for Gregory, it felt like a beginning. He grabbed his camera bag and headed for the door. There was a spot in the nearby park he'd been meaning to photograph at sunset. As he stepped outside, Gregory took a deep breath of the crisp evening air. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly free. Free from the shadows of betrayal. Free from the weight of a failed marriage. Free to become the man he was always meant to be. Gregory Reed walked into the gathering twilight, ready to capture the beauty of the moment and of the countless moments yet to come in his new life. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.
Welcome to my channel, where every story comes to life. Dive into captivating narratives that spark your imagination. Let's start today new narrative story. Imagine thinking your life was perfect. Married to your best friend, raising a wonderful child, living in a beautiful house by the beach, until one simple notification turned your entire world upside down. 4. Ethan Blake, a 36-year-old financial advisor from Sydney. This wasn't just a nightmare, it was his reality. What he thought was a loving marriage became a web of deceit, unraveling in ways he never expected. Join me on this emotional roller coaster as we dive into a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and a man's quest for justice. This is not just another tale of infidelity. It's a story about finding truth where lies once thrived. Ethan Blake and his wife, Chloe Blake, live in the vibrant northern beaches of Sydney, a picturesque area known for its ocean views, affluent residents, and laid-back coastal lifestyle. Ethan is a 36-year-old financial advisor, a man of routine who works long hours to provide for his family. Chloe, 34, is a yoga instructor who is well loved in their community, admired for her beauty, charm, and graceful demeanor. Together, they have an 8-year-old son named Jack, a curious and energetic boy who is the apple of his father's eye. Their social circle consists of close friends, many of whom envy the seemingly perfect life Ethan and Chloe have. They often host barbecues on weekends, spend time with other families, and take Jack to the beach for surfing lessons. Ethan, though successful in his career, always felt that family was his greatest achievement, until everything changed. It all started on a warm Saturday afternoon. Ethan sat in their spacious backyard, enjoying a cold beer as Jack kicked a football around. The scent of eucalyptus filled the air, and the sound of distant waves crashing onto the shore provided a soothing background. Chloe was lounging on a deck chair, her phone in hand, typing furiously. "Who are you texting?" Ethan asked with a smile, hoping for a light-hearted response. "Oh, just the girls. We're organizing a yoga retreat," Chloe replied without looking up, her voice too casual, too practiced. Ethan didn't think much of it at first, but as the weeks went by, her behavior grew more secretive. She had become glued to her phone, often texting late into the night, locking her screen when he entered the room. Something felt different. They had always shared everything, but now there was a distance between them. Conversations had become more superficial, and their once regular date nights dwindled into rare occasions. Ethan, always the rational thinker, tried to dismiss his suspicions. After all, Chloe was a busy woman, and he knew his long hours at work didn't help. But there was a nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach that he couldn't shake. One evening, while Chloe was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Ethan glanced at it out of curiosity, his eyes landing on a message from someone named Josh. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Josh? Who the hell was Josh? Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the message. His mind raced, piecing together every odd behavior Chloe had exhibited over the past few months. He quickly put the phone down when he heard the water stop, his heart pounding in his chest. He spent the next few days in a state of paranoia, watching Chloe closely, replaying moments in his head. Could she really be having an affair? Ethan had never doubted Chloe before, but now every smile, every glance at her phone seemed suspicious. His mind was consumed by the possibility. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, Ethan decided to take matters into his own hands. Late one night, after Chloe had fallen asleep, he installed a discreet app on her phone that synced her messages to his own. He felt a pang of guilt as he set it up, knowing it was an invasion of privacy. But Ethan needed to know the truth. He couldn't confront her without proof. For the next few days, the app picked up nothing suspicious. The messages were casual, often related to her yoga clients or friends. Ethan began to wonder if he had been overreacting, doubting himself for suspecting her. But just when he was about to uninstall the app, the real bombshell dropped. One evening, as Ethan sat alone in his home office, a series of texts between Chloe and Josh appeared on his screen. He froze, staring at the words, his world crumbling around him. Josh wasn't just some casual acquaintance. He was her lover. Josh, a 31-year-old personal trainer at Chloe's yoga studio, had been having an affair with Chloe for months. The texts were filled with flirtation, intimate details of their encounters, and plans for future meetups. Chloe had told Josh things she hadn't shared with Ethan in years, the emotional depth of their conversations, Saint, even more than the physical betrayal. She had confided in Josh, complained about her marriage, and painted Ethan as the neglectful, absent husband. Ethan's hands shook as he scrolled through the messages, each one more painful than the last. He had given his all to their marriage, to their family. How could she do this to him? To Jack? The next morning, Ethan could barely focus. His mind was racing, filled with a toxic mix of rage, sadness, and confusion. He knew he had to confront Chloe, but the thought of the conversation terrified him. He didn't want to believe it was real, but the messages were undeniable proof. There was no escaping the truth. After Jack left for school, Ethan found Chloe in the kitchen, sipping her morning coffee. She greeted him with a smile, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside him. "Chloe, we need to talk," Ethan said, his voice steady but cold. Chloe looked up, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" Ethan placed her phone on the counter, unlocked, with the incriminating messages on display. He watched as the color drained from her face. She didn't say a word, but her eyes were filled with guilt. "I know about Josh," Ethan said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I know everything." Chloe's hands trembled as she reached for the phone, her eyes darting over the messages. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized she had been caught. She looked up at Ethan, her voice barely a whisper. "Ethan, I'm so sorry." "Sorry? That's all you have to say?" Ethan's voice cracked, his anger rising to the surface. "You've been lying to me for months. How could you do this to us? To Jack?" Chloe broke down, sobbing into her hands. She tried to explain, to justify her actions. She said she had felt lonely, neglected, that Ethan had been too focused on work and not enough on their relationship. She claimed that Josh had given her the attention she had been craving, that it had started as an emotional connection and spiraled into something more. But Ethan wasn't buying it. They had both been busy. They had both struggled with balancing work and family, but he had never strayed. He had never even considered it. Chloe's betrayal wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice, a selfish, deliberate choice. Ethan walked away from the conversation, unable to process the magnitude of what had just happened. He couldn't look at Chloe without feeling a wave of disgust and anger. He couldn't believe that the woman he had loved and trusted for over a decade had done this to him. Over the next few days, Ethan thought about his next move. He wasn't going to make any rash decisions, but he wasn't going to let Chloe off easy either. He wanted justice, for himself and for Jack. First, Ethan contacted a lawyer and began the process of filing for divorce. He made sure that their assets would be divided fairly and that Jack would be protected in the custody arrangements. Chloe had no idea that Ethan was moving so quickly behind the scenes. She thought she still had time to fix things, to repair the damage she had caused. But Ethan had no intention of letting her back into his life. Next, Ethan started subtly unraveling Chloe's reputation. They had a tight-knit circle of friends, many of whom admired Chloe for her grace and beauty. Slowly, Ethan began telling close friends about what had happened. He didn't embellish the truth or paint himself as a victim. He simply laid out the facts, allowing others to draw their own conclusions. Word spread fast. Chloe's perfect image began to crumble. Friends who once admired her now whispered behind her back. Their social circle, once filled with barbecues and weekend outings, now avoided her. Josh, the younger man she had risked everything for, quickly distanced himself from her as well. He wasn't interested in being involved in the fallout of a broken marriage, especially when it became clear that Chloe's life was unraveling. Chloe found herself isolated, her perfect life shattered. The affair had cost her more than just her marriage. It had cost her friendships, respect, and the life she had carefully crafted. Ethan, on the other hand, slowly began to rebuild his life. The divorce was painful, and adjusting to shared custody of Jack was difficult, but he was determined to move forward. He threw himself into his work, focusing on expanding his business and securing a stable future for himself and Jack. He also spent more time with Jack, making sure that his son knew he was loved and supported. They took weekend trips to the beach, went on hikes, and explored Sydney together. Jack, though young, sensed the tension between his parents, but Ethan made sure to shield him from the worst of it. He didn't want his son to carry the weight of their broken marriage. One afternoon, as Ethan and Jack walked along the shoreline, the sun setting behind them, Ethan felt a sense of peace for the first time in months. The pain of Chloe's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer consumed him. He had taken back control of his life, and he was moving forward, one step at a time. And that, my friends, is how Ethan discovered the double life his wife had been leading, hidden behind the simplicity of a mobile chat. It's a stark reminder that betrayal often starts small, with the secrets we think we can keep hidden. But the truth has a way of coming to light, no matter how deeply it's buried. What would you do if you were in Ethan's shoes? How would you handle the situation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.